Welcome to It's a Controls Problem, where we do precision guesswork based upon unreliable data given to us by those of questionable knowledge. I'm your host, Charles Johnson. Welcome, everyone. Here's your host of It's a Controls Problem. My name is Charles Johnson. Matthew, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic.
All right, and today we actually have a very special guest, someone who I'm a fangirl of for sure. This is the goat of graphics, I like to call right now, Louis Laurents with BASGFX. So, Louis, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, sir. I don't know about goat. That's going to be Jerome.
Well, okay. I mean, maybe. Like, I mean, I love Jerome. I love his stuff, but I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of your stuff. So, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. So I tell you what. Let's go ahead and let you introduce yourself for the masses that actually don't know who you are.
Well, I'm Louis. I've been in the industry for almost 20 years in HVAC, just in general, probably 19 years now. I started in 06 as an HVAC technician and kind of migrated to controls, and now I do graphics.
Speaking of which, can you share that pivotal moment that led you down to, where you're building graphics now?
That was about, I'd say 2015, somewhere around there. I was in the tech room, turning in my paperwork for Monday morning, and the controls manager for the mechanical company I was working for made a comment that I overheard that he needed a 3D compressor. And I asked him what he's talking about, and he's like, I need a 3D compressor, a compressor in 3D with, animations. It has it turning on and off. And I was like, I can do that. And he's like, yeah, right. And I went home and made it in about 45 minutes and sent it to him. And that's kind of when I realized, holy moly, my hobby is actually needed in air conditioning, right? So that kind of started the ball rolling. And then I realized, through Google searches that there's an actual 3D industry for HVAC, and it just kind of blew my mind. And that's kind of when about, I don't know, just a few months later, if not a couple weeks later, I bought the domain BASGFX. And that's kind of been there all along, just not really doing anything with it.
So when did you decide that you were going to just do it full time? When was the moment where you're like, all right, I'm going to do full send?
That was end of 2022, beginning of 2023, December and January. I had got laid off, and I had just literally sold everything I owned and bought a cabin in the woods in Arkansas and lost my job. Our entire company was laid off for the most part. And I kind of panicked. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this. And I made some stuff and posted it on LinkedIn, and people started kind of going crazy. I wouldn't say I went viral, but I had a lot of people asking, where's your website? And I still own the domain, but I didn't do anything with it. I had hosting, right? I just removed everything, just own the domains. I had hosting, but I didn't have a website up. And got all that stuff done really quickly, flying by the seat of your pants. And on a weekend, built a terminal unit library and released it. And that's kind of all she wrote.
Wow! So your first library was the terminal unit.
I really didn't have a choice. It was either try to make this happen or, move back to Texas and get back in a service van, right?
Yeah. So sometimes the two men in a truck. That's sometimes that's fun, but it can reach its own limits at times too.
Definitely. Yeah.
So what do you think? About what do you think the biggest hurdle was, like as far as getting your name out there? Like, what do you think from people who are wanting to start to create their own graphic thing and do their own? Because you got Monty and
Yep.
Jonathan Stipich. You've got some of those people that want to get out there and really do it. Like, what do you think are some of the lessons learned that, maybe it's like, now, but you wish you kind of knew then kind of thing?
I mean, with those two guys in particular, I mean, they're in the industry, so they already know what the client's going to need. They were in the trenches. You know, whether it was Monty on the engineering side or Jonathan doing service, he already knows exactly what his customers need, right? I mean, like anything, you're going to start a business, especially graphics, you have to have customers, right? Number one. Um, but you also have to understand the business and exactly what those customers need, right?
Sure.
Yeah. With Jonathan, I think he started just building stations, right, and doing station templates, and then learned how to do floor plans, and then now he's got a little more. Um, how would I put it? He has more services to offer, more alternate forms of income besides this one thing that I do.
Hmm.
Yeah. Eventually you'll get stretched thin. So that's I think that's the biggest thing is, you know, do one thing, do it well, right? Um, and as you start to get better, faster, and then start adding more services and getting really good at those other services that you offer to customers.
Now, not only do you do your own, do your own graphics and have your own graphics library, but I believe that you also do some Niagara graphics as well, right? Like people can come to you and they if they want a full station.
Absolutely. You know that that's painful because like I said, I'm the only Niagara certified guy with the company, so I'll end up having to do all that work on top of running the company and doing everything
Yeah.
else, right? So I can't really take on a whole lot if that makes any sense.
Sure.
And stations are they're a crapshoot. You don't know what you're gonna get.
That's
you
very
know,
true.
illegal naming conventions, and I'll get a station where they integrated a carrier over CCN or something like that. And, if you don't know the table names, right, of a lot
Hmm.
of those CCN devices and you're just not familiar with CCN, you're like, oh, I don't know what that is. That's capacity, right,
Yep.
for this circuit or that circuit. And it's not going to spell it out for you. You're going to either have to know or you're going to have to do a lot of searching just to figure out what that point name's supposed to be, right?
Sure.
Yeah,
Um,
so.
like, how many people do you actually have in your company?
So, including me, four.
Okay.
And
Wow.
they're mainly my other three employees are mainly doing floor plans and site renders.
Okay.
So campus 3D campus renders and floor plans because that's a
So
majority of our business.
with the floor plans, are you still using Blender or are you using another product or?
So we use two different products. Just depends on the scope. If it's a single or really small multi-story building, two of my guys are going to be using SketchUp with,
Okay.
with a paid renderer. If it's something really complicated with lots of duct work and we're talking about multi-stories with piping or anything like that, we're going to be using Blender. It just depends.
So, what do you? I think a question I want to ask you is, how do you? Trying to think what's the best way to think about this. So obviously you have to become a trusted advisor, right? Like it's one of those things when you are making a name for yourself, becoming that trusted advisor. What do you think is the key to the success in your perspective, especially for graphics of being that trusted advisor to people, knowing that they entrust you to build the quality graphic that they need.
I'm sorry, ask that again. I
Sure.
didn't.
So what I'm saying is, like, I believe, a lot of us are in the field because, people come to us over and over again because not only do we provide the products that they're looking for, but they trust us, right? Like we've built that level of trust where they can come to us for where they can come to us for advice or guidance. So what was your main focus on becoming that trusted advisor to your customers?
I mean, just trying to be Johnny on the spot, right? If they paid for something and they want it modified, just get it done. Yes or no, sir, right?
Yeah, I
Yes,
guess it's
ma'am, no,
true.
ma'am. Yeah, just answering your emails immediately. I tend to do that. It frustrates me when people don't answer right away, but they're a whole lot more busy than I am.
Sure.
So, especially running a controls department or something like that. But I think really it's just, you know, yeah, if they need something flipped or something like that, or they want something changed, yeah, don't charge them for it. They paid for it. Let's just do it,
Oh
right?
wow. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really good. That is definitely very customer service oriented,
You
not
know,
necessarily nickel and diming someone.
yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try and bundle as much value in the product as possible, especially if it's something on my website, right?
Hmm.
If it's a
Yeah.
cool only unit and they're like, hey, a customer reached out the other day and he's like, I see all these Aeon units. I got a cool only with no hot gas reheat, no heat. And I was like, really, it's going to be this model number, but I don't have a cool only version, but um, I'll bundle it in there and you can have one that'll do anything, right? It'll have
Yeah.
gas heat, no heat, electric heat, right?
Yeah.
Reheat, no reheat, cool only, that kind of thing. So, quickly this morning I got in there, made it, and sent it to them. So, yeah, and we'll have customers we had a huge multi-story building over there in Virginia, and they never requested ductwork. And when we looked at the initial email, it was like, hey, we kind of want ductwork and boxes, but it wasn't just, we didn't quote it. It wasn't in the quote. And yeah, that's a good $1,200, you know, and they had already spent quite a bit of money on that job with us. So we just ate it. We just ate it because,
Wow.
it's the expectation, right? They were expecting to have that. And it was a newer project manager, and just to keep that trust, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and make the customer happy, and make sure that they get what they want. And it doesn't always work out that way. You can, just try to do your best.
No, that's a good way to think about it. I think I think providing that level of kind of, it seems like like you definitely provide like a concierge service. I don't know why I said
Absolutely, yeah.
service, but yeah, like you provide a concierge service that's actually quite nice. Knowing that, I think that probably gives customers a great level of feeling like, yeah, I can go to Lewis and he can go ahead and take care of this, and it's not really a big imposition for him. He just wants to do it. He wants to make the customer happy, and yeah, that is super good. And I think that I was going to ask you about your unique perspective and approach. But I think that actually kind of does set you apart from probably some of the others in the built environment. Is that level of that level of service right there. Um, what do you to date? What do you think your favorite project has been so far? Like, what were you really excited? Like, oh man, this is awesome to build.
It's going to be a chiller of some sort. And really, I get excited when I have a lot of reference material. I'll get a bunch of air handlers and some really weird stuff where I just don't have any reference material, and it's just not something I enjoy doing. Um, it may just be some product marketing from the company, but we just can't get any real information about what's inside the unit, right? And then you can't go crazy and make it look exactly like it, and that always frustrates me. But when I can get the installation and operation manual, and I can get all the details, what everything looks like, and even better pictures of the actual equipment, that's when I really start to get happy. because I can go crazy on the details, right?
So yeah, no, I've seen. I remember I was dealing with. I don't know who it was. My former company that I was working for, we were doing bear sciences. So like the people that make aspirin or whatever.
Hmm.
But this was more of a greenhouse side, and the unit they had, like you actually could like hover over the door and like hover over like one of the equipment doors and it would actually just open up so you could then see like inside the coil and then like you could move away. Like once you were finished mousing over, then like the door went back, but like you can go in and see all that kind of stuff. So
Was that like a digital twin?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was quite stellar
That's
to
really
see.
popular right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, digital twinning. I definitely have some perspectives about that for sure, but that'll definitely be for another show. But I think a question I actually follow up to this is, what do you think the best way, or what is the best method that you have found to get the proper submittals that you need in order to build the equipment?
That's Googling. Whether you're a mechanical technician on the roof and it's 120 degrees outside and the roof's a bill 60, you don't understand the sequence of operation. It's nice to be able to do a search and, pull a train or carry a IOM. It really depends on the manufacturer, right?
Yeah.
Some don't release it. And then when you reach out to them, they're like, hey, talk to our distributor. And then, they don't even say that they're a distributor of your product, and you don't know who to talk to. So at that point, and in some instances, I have to leave it toward the customer to get me that information, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. You just being a mechanical technician just makes it easier for me because I know where to go and I know what I'm looking for.
Sure. And how long do you think it's taken you to build the library that you use so far to kind of like help quickly come up with some of the graphics that you do?
At least, yeah, at this point, 3 years. Yeah, at
Wow.
least 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you ever just kind of like just look at things just to get some inspiration to just play with some additional ideas on things that you're working on?
All the time. You know, there's you know, there's a lot of competition. Well, I wouldn't say a lot. There's a little bit of competition in this industry, and UV lights, right? Flame animations, uh, liquid animations, boiling off, evaporating, condensing, right? What are the better ways to do that? How efficient can we get? And that's really comes down to a production pipeline, right? So I'll figure out some stuff in geometry nodes with water and make loops of water going through a pipe, and then I'm like, okay, we can do this. How long is it going to take? Or what's it going to take to replicate this on every project? And what do I have to do to make this easy to where I can drag and drop this in with little or no fuss, right? And get the states or animations that I need to get, whether it's a flame animation or liquid boiling off or sloshing around in a vessel, right? Um, that's some of the things that we've been working on, um, and yeah, it's time consuming.
Have you gotten any requests yet to have controls like on the terminal units or things like that, like a picture of a controller, like maybe like in a like next to like on a VAV where it's actually just moving the actuator yet? Have you gotten any of that?
You mean like a specific brand or something like that?
Yeah, yeah.
No, no.
Okay.
Um, I mean, I could open up, any one of those electrical panels. They're just cubes with some fasteners stuck to the top of them. So I mean, it's really not that big of a deal. Um, the only issue there is that's a can of worms, and if you haven't been doing this for a long time, you've got a lot of controllers to make.
Yeah, that is true. You're like, I didn't even
Yeah,
know that was still a thing. Yep.
sensors are one thing, but controllers, boy, yeah, that's a lot of work. I mean, just Honeywell's products alone.
Yeah, I mean, like even if you're dealing with the striker or the spider or even the
TR
optimizer stuff.
TR21, right? Yeah,
Yep,
TR20.
yep.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, I can definitely see, trying to, if you had like a product line that you were dealing with specifically and trying to get that, because like you did the TR500, I think,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
which is a pretty sweet, it's a pretty sweet graphic.
The thing about that is that there's two versions of that. One is just, a blank sensor that you can just slap on your graphic, and then
Mhm.
one that where I rebuilt all the icons. Um, you know, Doing something like that, yeah, I would have to reserve, okay, 2 hours of this week's going to be dedicated to making miscellaneous sensors for different manufacturers and start
Yeah,
doing that, or actually just hire someone um, and get them in-house to start on that kind of project where I'm going to end up building a library of sensors per se, because I just don't have the time to sit around and make a bunch of little things, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you? So this is something that's interesting. Like when I look at pricing of objects, what do you think is the biggest thing? Like how? I mean, you don't have to answer it, but like I guess for me, it's like if I want to sell, if I want to sell a product, how do you determine what it's worth to the general public?
Yeah, that's kind of I flat rate a lot of stuff,
Hmm.
Someone may request a really, really, really detailed chiller graphic, right? For
Hmm.
instance. I may spend one day on it if I'm really excited and, shapes are conforming to my hands and I'm able to manhandle these shapes into what I actually want to make it look like that. It just depends, man. I mean, a really big chiller, I might get that thing done in a day. It might take 2 days, right? And
Hmm.
typically, doing something hyper detailed, it's going to take me about 2 days. I can't charge 2 days worth of labor.
Sure.
That's going to be insane, right?
Yeah.
I doubt someone's going to want to spend $1,000.
Right.
So I flat rate it, and
Okay.
then if it's a chiller or a rooftop unit, something where the model number is not going to change, you're
Hmm.
not going to see really any difference besides tonnage, right? And then you
Sure.
start getting into whether it has one or two fan motors, right? Um, or the size of the vessels themselves, and it starts to become kind of arbitrary at some point. And you can reuse that graphic over and over and over again. If it's something I'm going to resell, I'm just going to flat rate it. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
flat rate it and I'll sell it on my website for that cost.
Sure. So, as you just said, that the devil's in the details, right? What do you think to date so far? What is the biggest detail that you've had to do that was like so frustrating to you? Like maybe like you had it or you sort of had it, and then all of a sudden you're like, it's not quite right, and then like eventually you're like, ha, it works exactly the way I want. What do you think that has been so far up to date for you?
Oh, that's just 3D. 3D is about problem solving, right? So it literally that's what 3D modeling is. It's all about problem solving. You have a set of skills and a set of tools, and there's 100 ways to get that done, right? Whatever you're having to do, and you may approach it totally wrong for an hour or two and give up, cutting a hole in a cylinder and getting getting that hole to be clean with no visual artifacts, right? Because
Yeah.
that's the issue, and really, yeah, it's just trial and error, and then you'll come back the next day and get it done in 15 minutes, right?
Yeah. What
Yeah, sometimes you got to stop, do something else, right? Yeah.
Lewis, I can like the way that you're working like the 3D stuff. Like I can in my head right now I just envision like Alan from The Hangover when he's playing blackjack and you just see like all like the mathematical equations just kind of like going through his head. Like I just sit there and I see you just having all them being able to visualize that. Do you play chess at all?
I used to, yeah, when I
Okay.
was a kid, yeah, quite a bit.
I was going to say, like, I bet you people who do, this 3D stuff here and kind of solve those puzzles like that. I bet you have a very good spatial mind when it comes to that. So that's why I was like, huh, I wonder if he does play chess.
A lot of it's reference. You can have a really good piece of reference, but it takes experience to turn that reference into something that looks accurate. And I get that a lot. A lot of guys will reach out on LinkedIn. They're like, "Hey, check this out." I'm like, "Well, man, that weld is 4 inches from from the side of that, from the top of that compressor, that pecker head. If you look at the picture, it's only about a half inch higher. So you'll see some goofy scale issues, right?
Hmm.
And once you get too far, it's almost no turning back. So the kind of person I'm looking for is someone that is paying attention to those small details and not getting overwhelmed, right, by all the
Yeah.
things that they have to do. Um, yeah, that's kind of important.
I bet that's tough to hone back sometimes. I know for me, and I know for Matthew as well. I think that I think the three of us probably are like, no, we've got to do it this way, and then like we're going to continue to do it until it gets to like, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that overall. Um, you
Yep.
know, and, I,
You do have to know when to stop because you could
yeah.
noodle forever.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that like you can just go unhinged, and all of a sudden like you look and it's 3 o'clock in the morning. You're like, wait a minute, what? Where did the rest of the time go? Um, I,
It took me half my adult life to learn when to stop, and I'm still not great at it.
Yeah, same here.
it's funny because Matthew was in one of my classes that I taught, and sometimes we'll go over some stuff, and he'll actually see me. I'm like, hold on one second, let me rearrange this on the wire sheet. Nope, not quite. Hold on, let me. And I'll tell my students, like, look, sometimes half the time that you probably spend in the station is just arranging it the way that you want to see it. You're like, that is not. I'm like, I need to move it up like 5 more pixels. Once I
Oh,
move it
I'll
up
do
one
it.
box, yeah.
That link mark better be straight.
Yes, yes, I will. I will tell you when I composite out when I composite out like inputs and outputs on a folder. I can't tell you how long I've spent at times reordering them to make sure that every line
So
matches.
I thought that was bad practice, compositing, because every single link mark inside of a folder has to go through the CPU cycle. So when you composite, you're getting double the calls to the CPU per cycle. Is that true?
In at some there can be some performance issues depending upon how you set it up. It there are for me there are ways where I keep compositing limited. Like if I'm going to be doing a ton of if I know that I'm going to need a ton of links, then I won't do that.
Gotcha.
Then what I'll do is
And
I'll
it's going to be on a Jace, right? And if it's
yeah.
got a lot of controllers on it, man, I probably wouldn't link mark a whole lot.
Yeah, in the for the big thing there for the composite portion, yeah, it's you definitely have to know what you need to composite versus what not to composite. Like because
Gotcha.
what some people will do, Lewis, is they'll actually just copy like they'll take a bunch of like numeric writables and Boolean writables and link slots to there. And what I actually do is I actually just expose the thing I want to link to. So like I'll take like an OR block and I'll just link I'll composite out in one, in two, or in A, in B, and in C,
Gotcha.
rather
Yeah.
than creating all those external subscriptions. But yeah, from time to time, compositing all of it can wreak havoc. But I think if you're mindful about it, really, it's all. I think it's just all about intelligent design, just like with graphics too, where you got to lay things out because
I
as
programmed a plant and I was like, oh wow, I'll composite everything. I've got my primary and secondary pump loops in separate
yep.
folders doing their little control loop things. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. It's not all on one sheet.
Yes.
It's not
Yeah.
link marked to several wire sheets, right? And
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's the thing with with block programming, like, and I'll tell you, like, that's one thing about GFX I like is you can have multiple programming sheets, and then they have hubs and targets,
Oh,
and
that's
then
amazing. Yeah.
and then you can do it like ALC does the same thing that way. I hope that Tritium, I actually gave them that. I was like, hey, they kind of do it this way, like being able to like just kind of like hide the wires. So I'm hoping that Niagara 5 will be able to you'll be able to hide those
Yeah.
wires like that, so you can
I
just put
love the
everything there.
reference hubs and targets. I mean, if it goes to a set point, you don't even need to double click it and go there. You can just right click that hub and change that set point right there.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, it's just amazing.
Yeah. Agreed. It's yeah. So some of those kinds of things are great. Now, if I know I'm going to get really complicated, I actually just may make a program object. Like, you know what? It's all just going to go right here, and it's going to do its own thing,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
and be done. But not everyone can do that. So, I tell you what, there was something I saw. Um, graphics are the most important thing to a customer. Um, what do you if you were to lay out a graphic, like let's say you're using your own stuff and you're building a station. Let's say you have carte blanche on building your station. What do you think the best? What do you think the optimal layout is for an end user? What do you think the end user needs to be able to do from a graphic specifically?
Auto, HOA, and set points. Um, and that, you never know what the customer is going to want to see and what you really want to allow them to see. And it really depends on the engineer, right? I've
Hmm.
met some really, really particular engineers that know their stuff and they want to see all the balancing points, right?
Yep.
Typically, I don't expose balancing points because I can't take it for granted that they know what they're doing and they're not going to start changing all the min and max flows and right
Yeah.
and playing with K factors when they really shouldn't be doing that. Um, that just yeah, that can end up becoming a nightmare. Um, yeah, most of the time I don't get a submittal that says, hey, these are the points that need to be on the graphic, right?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, that's I kind of got to guess, right? So I think really that's just either the mechanical technician or the system specialist in me that knows what points need to be exposed, right? And
Yeah.
I've got a station that's not running, it's not live. I'm running it locally on my workbench, right? In
Hmm.
a in a supervisor, a development supervisor. So everything is stale when I see it, but I know if it's writable or not, and then I have to write up a pretty large document sometimes and saying, hey, you know, this set point's read only. It needs to be brought back in writable. Make sure it's named correctly, right?
Yeah.
Or you're going to have to relink your ord, etc. And I'll end up having a pretty large Word document or Microsoft OneNote document that I'm just going to pipe into an email and be like, here's the deficiencies, here's the issues they're going to have, right?
Hmm.
Um, that's just building stations. Here's what I don't know. I gave it my best shot to try and figure out what these mean, right? But I don't know what these points mean or etc. But a lot of it's just you brought the point in read only and it needs to be writable, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and
that
obviously we
happens
know
quite
that
a
you
bit.
have to delete it out and bring it back in,
Yep,
or for me, I like to show people pop-ups. Like if you don't want something to override it from the graphic, change the pop-up, enable it to false, right?
oh,
Like,
definitely. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. You're talking about the flag in the
Hmm.
property sheet. Yeah,
Uh,
pop up disabled.
yes, yeah, yeah. Yep,
Yeah,
on the graphic itself.
yep.
Another thing, Lewis, I think a lot of people from that perspective, what people have not really gotten into are the PX properties, where like you can create like like header one, header two, header three, and body one,
Absolutely.
body two, body three, right? Because
Yeah.
like when you're looking at like a website, right, you see things that pop out more or pop out less, and text is larger in here. So instead of actually literally trying to create,
Well, that's the issue that Niagara's gonna, and PX properties kind of solve that because we call
mhm,
that CSS, right?
yeah,
Yeah, and especially if you're using a framework like Vue or React, and then say Vue, you're going to be using Vuetify more than likely, or Material CSS. You're going to have a set of rules, right?
hmm,
That are automatically done for you. If it's body, it's automatically going to have, this CSS size, right, for the text. Um, PX properties kind of solve that, especially, if you build a strictly PX station and you don't use PX properties, and you're in training with the engineer and say the property manager and all the people that are going to be looking at the system, and they're like, it's too small, I can't read it. What are
Yeah.
you going to do? Are you going to go through every single text field, right? And change the font size, or are you going to change one PX property that's linked to all this stuff? That's a good way to go, but that takes a lot of planning. And I think after you've got a year or two of building stations, you're going to realize just how powerful that is, and variables, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just make a read-only widget. You don't have to worry about the pop-up. It's built in,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Y-
And quit dragging bound labels and then trying to highlight them all and say, distribute evenly, or right,
Yep.
because that'll bite you. It depends on what you're doing. And if you're trying to scale something or resize something, depending on the direction and how they're stacked on the screen, Niagara can do some really weird stuff.
Hmm. Yeah. I think I think one thing that I do like that is also highly underutilized is the new widgets.bog. So like when you like if you're anywhere in the station and you right click and it goes new and it's like
Yeah,
Boolean writable, numeric writable. Well, in the obviously on a PX page or a PX view, you have new label, picture, whatever. But like you can modify that to have it as a bound
that
label without
was
a pop
yeah.
up, and
That was in the original Niagara certification. That's where I learned to create a bog in Vern's classes, MOV training.
hmm.
That's in my AX certification.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's that is definitely all good stuff.
I don't
Um,
know if they're still teaching that.
Sort of like I mean, right now, a lot of it has been focused where we're getting a lot more. Like, we still have a fair amount of like building technicians that we have, but in the mix, we're also getting like a lot of like software engineers that are coming in. So
Hmm.
like you're getting a lot of more IT people. So there's a mix. Like some classes will have all like HVAC people. So I'll lead conversations a little more like, hey, here's some additional things that you're going to do in the field. And whereas like if I have more like IT and like software engineering people, um, I lead them into a different area. So
Gotcha.
I cater based upon that, and then when I have a good mixture, I balance between the both there.
Yeah, when I took my certifications, it's strictly HVAC guys wanting to
Yep.
be controls guys.
Hmm.
Some of them should have failed the test 3 times. I'm like, an open book test? How can you fail that 3 times, dude?
Yep.
I think you need to
So
do something else.
yeah. No, I agree. It's hard. It really is.
Not every mechanical guy can make a good controls guy.
Nope, and definitely not every controls guy can make a good mechanical guy. Though
Yeah,
understanding the mechanics is really important too. Um,
that's going to come with time.
yep, you're not wrong. But I tell you
Yeah,
what,
that's going to come with time.
speaking of leading though, I tell you what, let's you're going to be the first one to do this. We're going to be doing a live demonstration, and I know Louis, you're really excited about
Yeah,
this
great.
portion here. So if you want
No
to go
pressure.
ahead and share your screen here, and the floor is yours. Like maybe talk about first, like what's your primary software that you use, and then just go through some demonstrations.
So I use Blender for all of my equipment graphics. I'm an old 3ds Max user, 3D Studio Max,
Hmm.
back since about 1998. I've used just about everything out there, from Maya to Lightwave to FormZ, lots of old stuff. And I never ever really gave Blender a chance. And every
Yeah.
time I ever installed it, I ended up uninstalling it and going back to Max. And one day I bought a perpetual license for 3D Studio Max, and it cost me a little over $3,700.
Oh
And
wow.
that was the last year that they did perpetual licenses. So I kind of got stuck where now everyone's got 4K monitors, and display scaling's not compatible properly,
Hmm.
right? So if I use Max, I got to squint. The the viewport's large and pretty, but all of the menu systems are tiny.
Yeah.
So yeah, and there's no fix for it. Subscription as a service, software as a service. So
Yep.
you're gonna have to pay that $3,500 a year, whatever it is, right, to use it professionally. And I just gave up, and I watched a couple Blender tutorials, and yeah, I just kind of, you're going to want to beat your head against the ground if you've come from a traditional CAD background, right?
Hmm.
Like most 3D applications have their roots in CAD, and Blender's just a different beast. Um, you'll want, coming from Max or Maya, some of the industry standards, you're going to wonder, why is Blender doing this? Why can't I do this, or why can't I do that? And I think that's the biggest downside to Blender is the user interface, and they have a really really strong focus on that nowadays.
Hmm.
So they're starting to work on the UI, and it's getting a lot better. Here we have a rooftop unit. This is what my rendered camera view looks like.
Oh, wow.
And then we can throw the doors on it. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, absolutely. Can hear you
Okay,
perfectly.
it just got quiet real quick. Yeah, like I said, Blender's really difficult to use at first, especially if you're migrating from something you're really used to. You're not going to understand why Blender does certain things, and you'll get frustrated. Like I said, I've uninstalled it and installed it. I can't tell you how many times. And eventually, I just gave it a chance and started building some ductwork stuff for customers. And one thing led to another, and I started to kind of pick it up, and I was able to start flying through this stuff. So this particular equipment here is just like roughly a little 5-ton unit. So if I decide I'm going to turn this, I've created a bunch of states in Blender. So now this is electric heat, and we can turn the gas heat off. Then I can come into gas heat and turn the electric heat off and show all the gas piping. And then switch back to gas heat occupied, electric heat. Let me turn that off. And these states save themselves. So I can just swap back. Here's an electric heat, single stage.
Oh, wow.
And here's a 6 to 7 ton gas heat, 2-stage.
And so, you give the customer all of these to build their own.
Yeah,
To build
it
their own.
depends. Yeah, it depends on the product. If it's this chassis, they're going to get everything,
Okay.
right? I'll give them a single stage, a 2-stage, separate economizer. So if this has got 2 stages, I'm going to give you this economizer, which has the little, right,
Oh, wow. Look at that.
has the gears. And then I have the simple economizer like you'd find in most simple Voyagers, which is a little plastic flapper.
Hmm. Yeah, look at that.
And it just depends. Some of this stuff you kind of gotta, you're barely going to be able to see it, but at least it's there. Then you
So,
have your gas heat coming on. And this is the real-time renderer, so this isn't really what it's going to look like. It's going to be close. The color's going to be different, but if I
mhm.
switch to cycles and I give it a second, it's going to start.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
this
Look at
is what it's
that.
really going to look like. And then we can sit here and turn the gas heat on
That's super
if we
sweet.
want, turn the compressors on. Well, those are off, but if I come here and we look at what a compressor would look like if we came on and zoomed in on it, there's our compressor 1 state, and then I have the second compressor mask, so it's actually see-through. So we'll get all the glows, we'll get all the animations, and we'll be able to layer both of them.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, was that I saw the in the where it said train, like in the silver above the compressors.
The electrical
Um,
panel? Yeah.
yeah. So was that just like the thermostat terminal
Yeah,
strip right there?
that's exactly what that is. I just didn't go in there and put, all the T numbers,
Yeah.
and then the test 1 and test 2 pins aren't there, but it's close enough.
Yeah. Oh, that's
And I got the
awesome.
little hole with the LED so you can see the blinking on the board. So If you
Yeah.
don't feel like popping this off and you've got the panel off and you lean it up against there, you can see your error codes. And you're only really going to see an error code if you've got a cool fail or a heat fail and it's actually got pressure sensors. So,
Right.
yeah. And that comes into this. This was actually one of the first things I ever made. Let's get out of cycles. It's electric heat kit. And I put this in just about every unit. So, yeah. If it's wired accurately, but if it were accurate and this was actually a train, it would be inset down here. There'd be a slight depression. And I never understood why they put their fuse block right here, because that's where the water gets in, if it gets in. And I
Yeah,
found a
that's a problem.
bunch of these. Yeah, I found a bunch of these little high voltage fuses just blown up in here. So I
So
redesigned it.
how long do you think? I mean, so or not think? Well, how long did it approximately take to even like create those coils?
That's actually pretty quick. That's pretty quick. So these just follow a path, and you can actually still see the path that they follow. So if I grab this and drag it out, basically I'll create a curve and I'll say follow this, and it'll be an Archimedean curve, and it will just wrap along here.
So is that like similar to building an array, or is that completely different?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. I'm actually very, very, very similar. Very similar. I actually need to redo some of the heat kits that I've made, and yeah, I'll end up having to pull my notes and figure out how I did that. Yep. I mean, it's just one of those things. So Blender comes, it doesn't come out of the box. It kind of does, but they kind of do some weird stuff where it's got so much functionality. They don't give you everything. You've actually just got to turn it on. It's there, but there's extra objects and extra loops. So if I come into my mesh section or my curve section, I can add a spiral, and we can do an Archimedean spiral. And there it is. This is basically how I built the coil, right? And then we could say how many turns we want, how many steps, and let's pick the height up. Let's see, height. Right, and then this just follows that path.
Wow.
Right, and the cool thing about this is since it's a curve, I can edit it and just give it some thickness. And there's the heater coil.
Oh wow. Okay.
Rather large.
But well, I mean, but we get the point.
Yeah, and then I'll just assign that with a curve modifier and point it to that other curve, and
Hmm.
we're good to go. It's actually gonna, yeah, it's extremely large.
You know what's really wild to me, Lewis, is like the fact that how much you can zoom out, and then like how much you can zoom in. Like that's that is
There's a limit. So if I start zooming in, there is a limit. We'll get it to where it cuts it, right? And it also depends on what kind of camera you're using. If you're using an orthographic camera, you're gonna go straight through it.
that's
And a
awesome.
lot of times you'll get a viewport cut off, and you've got to change your distance where it actually starts manually cutting stuff off. Yeah. That's kind of how I put it all together. You know, these compressors, they're all pre-built. I've kind of anything that I make, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. You know, here's a coil. I'm going to throw that in there. Here's that same heat kit. If I need it, I can throw it in there. Here's the heat exchanger. Here's a couple VFD panels if I need them, right?
Hmm.
I can come in here, and here's a compressor. And I can say, oh, I want this compressor in here, so let's just add it. And then there it is. And it's hidden, so we'll just come into inserts and then hide that, and then there she is. And
Now,
then it's all modular, so I can move this stuff around.
how long did it make? How long did it take you to make that compressor?
Oof. Um, this is based off the original compressor I made for that guy, Chris
Okay.
Gonzalez at Mechanical Solutions. It's the same one. I would say about 2 days. Believe it or not, a compressor is a pretty complex shape to get right. So I do like a subdivision surface workflow for this. It's a
Hmm.
little complicated, but then I'm going to end up quadding it and what we call decimating it, or not necessarily decimating it. Just keep subdividing until it's super smooth, and
Okay.
it ends up being really high geo. But none of this stuff's going into a game engine. You know, the final
Yeah.
product is a 2D rendered image. I have a really beefy computer. I've got 24 gigs of VRAM here free,
Oh.
so I've got plenty of room. 16 cores, 128 gigs of RAM. So I tend to
Okay.
kind of go crazy.
Uh,
Um, you know, if you're just using a simple Dell laptop with an Intel graphics card, you're going to have some problems. But turn some of this stuff off and just work on one thing at a time, and then it'll flush out of memory, and you won't be using so much CPU, right?
so how do you get the perspective of so if you go back, if you zoom into the compressor a little bit, um, like where you see kind of like, yeah, like the reflection, like you see like a light, like at the, yeah, right there, like how do
That's
you get that?
materials. That's materials. So that look how simple this material is. It's just a base color. It's got a little bit of metallic in it and a little bit of roughness. Roughness is how rough the surface is. So if it's totally not rough, it's a mirror,
Oh, wow.
right? If I add metallic to it, it's going to darken it up, right?
Oh, that's
Just a
so
little
interesting.
bit. So if I make it really rough, it's going to be very matte, right? And
Okay.
that's really what an Alliance compressor looks like. It's going to be quite matte. But, why not add a little shine to it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it depends. Some of this stuff, like this, for instance, this is an actual shape that follows this curve. So if I needed to make, say, I needed some armored cable to go from here to there, I've got a
Hmm.
trick where I just create a cable real quick and say, I want you to go from there to there. And then there that cable is. Now I have a choice. I need this armored cable, so I can just come in here to my electrical, created a little piece of armored cable, and I
Hmm.
just add that in there. We'll scale it down a little bit, apply that scale, and then I can grab both of them and then just add the segment. And now it's stuck to that cable, and now I can array it.
Oh, wow.
So I come in and detail this stuff, right?
Hmm.
Way, way afterward. I'll put all the cables in here, all the piping. I'll do a lot of stuff, but then when it comes to, making this stuff look really cool, it's always the last thing I do.
So, so speaking of arrays, so like I know an array, I know what an array is, and you know what an array is. But for the lay person, can you explain what an array is, and maybe kind of show
So with
how to run
yeah,
that?
so with data, zero-based arrays. So you're just going to hold a series of values, right? And they're going to become separated. In 3D, so for instance, if I come in here and we'll just make a coil of some sort. I say this is my tube sheet. I'm going to make this a coil. Just extrude that a little bit. So that's going to be our tube sheet. We'll make this a coil. So first we're going to break this up. Let's break it up like this. Move it a little bit. And then, of course, we got to get good airflow through here. Make it efficient.
Yeah, we know what happens when you have a dirty coil.
Yeah, got to slow it just enough to pick up some heat. So there we go. We have a little fin. We'll just move it real close, and now we can array this. So what I'll do is I'll just come in here and array it. Whoop,
So
and then there we go.
basically, an array is a series
Correct.
of,
A count.
uh,
And this is a modifier, so it's fully modified. Here's an array modifier of a count of 160. I could make that 100. And got us a small coil. It's an infinite plane. That's why you see this red here. I'm
mhm.
actually looking, every 3D face has an orientation. We call that a normal. Um, Typically in 3D, if the face is pointing in the wrong direction, like you see here, red, when you render it out, it'll be totally see-through. You won't even see it. Um, so what we can do, let's just get rid of that red. what we can do here is just solidify this real quick. We'll add a solidify modifier and just give it a little thickness. And then now we have a coil. And these things are definitely a whole lot more stacked. Oops, wrong key. There we go. We kind of have a coil here. We can day mesh add small vertices here. Just like that.
And you're building the pipe, whether it's for hydronics or gas or just going through
Yeah,
the
so
coil.
this is just going to be your coil itself, right? So you got your fins and then your tube sheet that holds, right? And then this will
Yep.
just be the kind of and we can make that copper. Let's boop, come in here. Let's make this aluminum. So we'll just go to our materials, pick metal. I have aluminum matte. Let's do that. And then here we'll do the same thing, aluminum matte. And then we'll just make this copper shiny. And then we can array this. So first I'm going to convert this from a curve to a mesh, and then now we can just array this.
Yes, yeah, it's awesome.
Not quite accurate, but yeah, and that's kind of how we build this stuff. And then you get your free your free texture without having to texture it, because it's actually sort of kind of like a coil should be. It slows the airflow down, right? And you get this really nice pattern.
You know, I think what you bring to the game from a graphics perspective is your mechanical knowledge is impressive, and so like you actually understand the actual physics of the piece of equipment that you're drawing. Like you understand, you understand airflow. You understand, like I think that's a level of detail that I think many people can miss, because like I think it's one thing to draw it, but I think I think it's also equally as important to understand why you're drawing it that way.
Yeah, I daydream. So, on this train unit that we just looked at, it's kind of a right if you look at any other reference in say an IOM or something, they're not going to show you that there's a liquid line dryer in here, right? That's not going to be there. You're not going to see any of this stuff, right? I just know. Hold on, let's go to working so we can actually see it. I just know there's a liquid line dryer there, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
I absolutely know it's there. I know how it's mounted. This may not totally be accurate. I do know that the liquid lines come straight across here, because every time you open the panel, you're like, that's a bad spot.
Hmm. Yep.
But that's how Train does it. I mean, I have to take some liberty here and there, right? Um, just for time's sake, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't, I'm already going to spend something like this is going to take 3 days, right?
Yeah. You
Um,
can't show the
Depends,
pump down
right?
or anything. So yeah.
Yeah. So, just yeah, especially if this is a heat pump or something and I've got reversing valves in there. There's a lot going on, right?
Yep.
I do take some liberty. I make some crazy clamps, so the pipes don't vibrate.
well, well, for you, you're like, if I were to design it
Yeah,
this
and
way,
that
this is how
happens.
I would
Yeah,
have.
that happens quite a bit, right? But I'll daydream. I mean, I'll be doing pipes here and I'll be thinking about this. Yeah, I'll be 10 steps behind, the liquid line dryer, but I'm thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
I'm actually thinking about it. Thinking about, oh, I'm gonna put some liquid line dryers in there while I'm, doing the discharge line of the compressor, right? Trying to
Hmm.
feed some header that is in there. Yeah. So
Wow. And actually, I think what's also what's really interesting to note about this is for people who've never seen it. Like you can actually see kind of like the block code at the bottom of what makes it work too. Like in the
yeah, this
in
is the
yep.
colors. Yeah, these are
Yep.
these are these are just materials. So this is a cool and heat shader. So if I come in here, um, See, and if I go to here, well, where was it? Let's just go in there. Select that guy. Yeah, so this is either cool or heat. This originally was a model with a heat pump, right? So I actually had the coils turning blue if it was in heat mode. You know, when your reversing valve kicks in, your condenser becomes your indoor coil,
Yep.
right? Your outdoor coil becomes your indoor coil, and
Yep.
yeah, vice versa, whatever. When I do those swap overs, I'll actually show the compressor's fired, but the coil will glow blue, right? And in
Yeah.
this regard, the coil ends up not the evaporator, but if we go get this out the way, if we go to compressor one on, yeah, the coil glows, so I have control over it. So this is a mix shader, and I can say, do you want to be copper or do you want to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I can just slide this and make that coil copper if I want it,
Oh, see,
right?
this stuff here is I think it's so interesting because it's this level that like I would never want to do. Like I actually hate building graphics, any graphics at all. Um, but like seeing people like you, just seeing how passionate you are about this is amazing.
And you can make it cool too. You know, this might be a variable speed compressor, and they actually want to show this thing. You know, they actually might want to show this thing doing something crazy like going almost to 0 to 100% and getting brighter. You could do it.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
didn't
you can
think about
definitely
that.
do it. Yeah, because I can animate this from 0 to 100% and then render in 10 frame increments, right? And give
Yep.
you 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Just like I would for a chilled water coil or even a modulating gas valve. And, you know, I'll do that for heat. Even though it's electric heat and it's a single stage electric heat, it's either on or off.
Yep.
I'm still going to give you, um, I'm still going to give you 0 to 100% in 10 in
Sure.
increments of 10, just for giggles.
Yeah, because you can allow the image because like if it's if it's false, right, you just choose 0, and if it's on,
Yeah,
you choose 100, right?
100. Or
Yeah.
it might be a two-stage gas valve, right? Or right.
Yeah.
In that case, you could do 30% or 50% would be your first stage gas, and then you could, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, without having to add another heat exchanger, right? And some of these units may have two-stage gas valves, right? So you can actually show two different states. Well, you can choose. It gives you a little bit of options.
Well, I think I think that level of flexibility is really good because like what if like so for example like so what if someone wanted to let's say they were actually controlling this without enabling disabling stuff, right? Like let's say they're actually controlling all of it, right? So like let's say they want to calculate, maybe they want to put a terminal load in the unit, right? So you have your 0 and 100 and 0 to minus 100, but then like they can take that, they could take those
Yeah, and
values and then
and they don't have to use it. I mean, I
yep.
have evaporator states. You don't have to turn the evaporator on, right?
Yeah.
You can just use your compressor states.
Hmm.
You definitely don't need to turn the evaporator on, right?
Yeah.
You don't even have to use it. And then this is a single stage, but here's the was it first stage, two stage, yeah. So I have the different liquid lines flipping, right?
Hmm.
The TXVs.
Yeah. You know, I'm glad that you brought up like the values of 10 because I've seen people try to do like values of 5, and I think that's just way too many
That's overkill.
images.
I've had complaints with customers because when you bind, you only have 10, right? So you have
Hmm.
0, and then when you do a numeric binding, um, the issue is what about 1%? They'll be like, it's 4%, it's 5%, and it looks shut. So what I do for the first one is 0 to 1, and
Hmm.
then anything above 1 is 10%. And then the
Yeah.
last state is 90 to 100.
Sure.
And that's how I end up just defaulting it because I had customers complain. They're like, hey, man, I see a number. It's shut.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
I,
okay.
I,
Yep.
I mean, I guess I understand, but like, if it like, is there a real big difference between 0% and 4%?
You
Not.
got me. Or it's
Yeah.
going to be 10, right? Because
Yeah.
if you did 0 to 10 as 0, they're
Hmm.
going to see 9.9, and that thing's still going to be shut, right?
Yep.
People are nitpicky. You just never know, right? So now if it's above 1%, you're getting 10%.
Yeah.
By the way, I used to render a 5% state.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I did one 5% state just for that purpose, and I got tired of doing it. Especially with my workflow before, I didn't have flexibility,
Hmm.
and I have increments. So if I do something like the damper, you'll notice it's 0 to 100 frames at 10 frame intervals. I
Yeah.
have to make a separate state just to show 5% all by itself.
Sure.
And back in the day, I didn't have tools where I could say, okay, all this stuff is on or off when I click on this one button. I had to do everything manually, and it just ended up, right? It
Yeah.
ended up being a real pain to keep doing that over and over and over again. And I don't know if anyone's using it or not.
Yeah.
I never get any feedback,
True.
right? I mean, I give people off states, and I guarantee you, most of the customers aren't using the unoccupied state of the unit,
Yeah.
right? And
Well,
on a Jace, that's a lot of data to decide, oh, I'm gonna do an off state as well, and it's gonna
hmm,
cover everything, right? And then, you've got your hierarchy on a PX view. If this thing's on top of everything, well, yeah, you're not clicking on anything, that's for sure. Um,
yeah, it'd be interesting, someone like building, instead of using PX pages, right? Like whether they use like Baja script and then like, generate just the HTML and then just kind of building everything that way.
I
That'd
thought
be
about,
insane.
man, I thought about that the other day. I was like, I wonder if they'll ever get rid of PX views and just say, hey, use CSS and HTML.
There may be an option, right? Like I think some of that stuff is kind of I
That
think it's
new
kind of tough.
velocity, yeah, I mean, velocity, you can make some really cool stuff with that velocity stuff.
Yeah, but I think like like one thing that's great about Tritium is like they do like if you are kind of more on that development side, right? They definitely give you that, but I don't know if they'll ever get away from PXs specifically because like you still have people that just want to
It's a
do the basic
mistake.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a mistake. I think it's a
yeah.
mistake because now it's not accessible.
Hmm.
And now you need someone specialized to come change a graphic when you don't have remote access.
Louis with BASGFX, yes.
Not, not gonna happen. Well, we used to build, we do PX includes,
Hmm.
and
Yep.
we would include PX files as the graphic and do a Vue.js side nav, and
Yeah.
it's a compiled single page application, right?
Yep.
It's not an HTML file that you can open. It's a main.js, right?
Hmm.
Being injected into the HTML file. So it's just really one giant JavaScript file.
Yeah.
And that's a problem when, a customer wants their graphic changed. The only thing they can do is send me a copy of the station, or I have to pull it down from Git, is what we did, right? I'd pull it down
Sure.
from Git, make the change, and then
Hmm.
send the guy a zip file and say, hey, delete the app folder and paste this stuff in there.
Yeah.
And you'll have a new front end, right?
Yep.
Yeah, with
You know,
those changes, and that's not always viable.
No, you're absolutely right. I was just about to say that, but yeah, well said. You
I
know,
think the better approach would be a standard HTML file with a little JavaScript in it. That way they can
hmm,
see the origin, just change them, and it's not really that difficult when you're looking at, right, an array of objects, right? And you
yep,
can say, oh, that says floor plans. Let me duplicate that, right? Just a
yeah,
little bit of, a little ingenuity and a little want, and
hmm,
you can start duplicating menu stuff and starting to get the hang of it. It's not that hard.
yep,
Yeah, if you can parse through some text and kind of just, yeah, get a good overall of it.
yep.
Not
I
too
see here
difficult.
there's VS Code here too in Blender.
Yeah, so when I develop an add-on or something like that,
Uh
I'm
huh.
going to use VS Code. I'm going to run a server in VS Code to link to Blender. So when I'm developing a tool, I can see the changes in that tool real time.
Okay. Wow.
Yep.
So it's like module dev of the UX side.
Absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely. So you can actually develop your entire plugin in their scripting, which I kind of haven't removed. But if I go to General and we go to scripting, you can just type Python in here and immediately see what's going on.
Oh wow.
So
Okay.
if I did a Shift A and I created a cube, there it is. If I copy this and I paste this in here, oops. Let's copy this. We'll have to create a new text file. And then I paste that in here. I don't think I need to import BPY, but we can. And then I just press play. It's going to create that cube,
Oh,
right?
see that's oh man, that is
So, and that's
that's awesome.
Python, right? So, yeah, you can do anything in Python you want. I mean, you can do math here, right? You can come into
Hmm.
this interactive console and go 3 plus 6, right? It's 9. Um, yeah, and then you can sit here and go, okay, bpy.context dot, and then tab, and then, oh, look, here's the view layer. So let's
Yeah,
go into the view layer, right? Dot, oh, what's in here, right? And then vertex pane object. You can start fiddling around, right? And you can see
yeah,
it here, bp ops.transform.translate. Well, what about scale? If I wanted to scale this, I would just change translate to scale and then
to
give it
scale.
a vector, right? I mean, this is a
Yeah,
3D vector, so we got X, Y, and Z, but and these are a bunch of default, right?
yeah.
Default things that it did, but you don't even need that. Really, you just need this, and it's just going to, right?
See,
So if we
that's
move it, it's translating it, right?
oh
So you could,
wow,
yeah, so
yeah.
you can say, oh, okay, I'll just create a for loop and make this thing spin around in circles forever with
Okay,
no break.
there you go. Yeah,
So yeah,
that'll
yeah.
take an engine.
And it's got
Okay.
some cool templates. I mean, you could sit here and go, hey, man, I want to build something. Let's build a UI list, right?
Hmm.
A generic UI, and then there it is. And if I play this, um, it ran the script. Let's see where it put it. It put it in View 3D. So if I come in here, there it is.
Oh wow.
So now I
Okay.
can start playing with this. I can change the label and say it's this tool made by Lou, and then just start doing stuff, right? And there's
Okay.
quite a bit of stuff to get you started. And of course, they've
Yeah.
got really good documentation. Um, yeah, and you'll be on Stack Overflow quite a bit.
That's wow. That's awesome. Matthew, do you have anything to
Yeah,
add or ask?
that's I'm just appreciating all that. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And Python's, it is super, approachable. So it's not hard to find a Python developer to develop you some tools to get your job done faster, right? Um, yeah, absolutely. And you could just save these into every file and run them without actually having to compile, right? And it's not really compiling. You're just putting in a zip file, giving it a toml, right?
Yeah.
And saying this does this and this does that, and this is where everything is. And yeah, you have an installable add-on that ends up being in here.
Wow. Well, Louis, this has really been eye opening here. And again, thank you for taking the time out of your day to do this recording with us. So we
Absolutely,
really
man.
have appreciated it.
Absolutely. Appreciate you
Definitely.
guys.
Thanks a lot, Liz.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're going to go ahead and end it here. I think this is a great stopping point, and Lewis, we will probably get you back on at some point and talk about some more things. But you've definitely, I think, you've given a lot of people a lot to process here. And just seeing how quickly you do stuff, right? Like it's amazing when you see people in their element, they're doing their thing, and it's like, oh yeah, you could do this and this and
No
this and this and
pressure.
this.
No
Yeah,
pressure.
yeah, yeah. And then you're like, I drew a stick figure, and it took 6 hours to do that. Is that okay? The biggest thing is like you can't get discouraged with that kind of thing, especially when you're learning how to play with it, right? Like it,
No,
it took
yeah.
forever to do it. So
A lot of
yeah,
people ask me, "Hey, man, I wanna do, BS graphics. Well, what have you done? I haven't done anything yet, but you can show me." I'm like, "No, man, just make it. You
yep,
know what it, download some air-cooled chiller images. Go on Google, download
yeah,
that stuff. Make it. Just make it. Um, yeah, you know, you got to give it a shot. And every time you do something, it's going to look terrible. Your first
yep,
air-cooled chiller or rooftop, it's going to look terrible. But keep doing it. The next one's going to look better and better and better, and you're gonna you're gonna be able to use your tools more effectively. You're gonna learn tricks, right? You're gonna learn, yeah, you're gonna learn techniques.
yeah,
Skills. These are just skills. There's no magic in it. It's just problem solving.
The
So
magic is getting addicted to it and then you and
yeah,
not being
you'll
able
find
to
out if you're
stop
really,
projects.
yeah, yeah. If if you love it, yeah, you're gonna succeed. You just gotta, you gotta put in the work, and that's doing this stuff over and over and over again until you're happy with what it looks like, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, Louis, this has been great. And again, thank you very much for.
Thanks for the opportunity, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have a great one.
All right, take
Thanks.
care.
Talk to you soon,
All right,
Lewis.
you too. Yep.
Bye.
Bye. All right, well, that's all we have for this episode. Remember to stay curious and create your array. I'm Charles.
And I'm Matthew.
And this has been It's a Controls Problem.
One time I was walking through Walmart and Right Said Fred came on. I'm too sexy. Right? Yeah.